It is another episode of the Juice on the Cuse Podcast. Wes Cheng alongside Brad Bierman. Thanks so much for joining us on this Friday, May 15th, 2026. So much to talk about with Syracuse as always. We begin today's show with the lacrosse team. Syracuse survived its first round matchup with Yale, needing some last-minute heroics from goalie Jimmy McCool to advance where they will face familiar foe North Carolina in the second round. Brad, is the third time the charm for the Orange this weekend?
Well, I was going to ask you back the same question, Wes. Yes, third time the charm or not, but the old adage, too, about playing a team three times in a season and winning, I've never really adhered to that. It's pretty simple what Syracuse has to do here. They know these two teams know each other very well. It starts, of course, at the face-off in lacrosse, and North Carolina has the best player in the country at that position in Brady Wambach. So Syracuse is going to have to win faceoffs, and they're going to have possessions in this game because they're going to have to score. So it starts with John Mullen, and then the big six offensively: Spallina, Roa, Leo, Thompson, Anderson, and Hoddle. Two or three of those players are really going to have to step up. It'd be even better to spread out the scoring, and Syracuse is going to have possessions to try to get enough offense because only scored 9 goals in the first meeting in Chapel Hill, then 10 goals in the ACC tournament, led early in the fourth quarter and collapsed. So a strong defensive effort needed, spread out the scoring, hope for the best on the face-offs, and in the NCAA tournament, Wes, how about a little bit of luck on the Orange side as well?
Yeah, Brad, as we've spoken about, Syracuse has already lost to North Carolina, including in the ACC tournament. I will note that Syracuse was a perfect 8-0 at home this season, including that win over Yale, only 4-4 on the road. And this is a neutral site matchup at Hempstead this Saturday. So back to the question, do I think Syracuse can beat North Carolina? You just mentioned the adage, it's hard to beat a good team 3 times in a season, but I honestly think that's what happens on Saturday. Again, you mentioned the face-off X. Let's look at the stats. In the first 2 games, Syracuse combined 22 of 53 at the X. Specialist John Mullen actually benched in that first matchup when he was 7 for 21 there. I also want to note he did go 21 for 33 against Yale, so he had a far better day. But to your point, Brad, it starts at the X with getting extra possession. Syracuse also really needs to figure out a way to slow down attackman Brevin Wilson. He had 5 points across the 2 wins over the Orange. And one thing I also want to add is this is a legacy game because Joey Spallina wearing number 22, if you can't at least get back to the Final Four, that's going to be a stain on his legacy. They've talked about championship or bust all season, and this is a big deal. If they can't get back, it's going to be a big deal for everyone's legacy there.
Absolutely agree, Wes. And look at the setup now. You have to beat 2 teams to get to the championship game that you lost to in the regular season, your ACC foes. If they can get by Carolina, then they would probably face Notre Dame if they get by Johns Hopkins. So tough road, but a championship team would beat the teams they want to beat that they lost to in the regular season, to your point.
So, Brad, we move on. Syracuse's non-conference basketball schedule starting to come together. Earlier this week, reports came out that Syracuse will travel to Madison Square Garden to match up against St. John's later this year. It is the first time they'll be at the Garden in 5 seasons. Brad, so important to structure the non-conference schedule to give SU a chance at some quality quad 1 and quad 2 opportunities. Do you like what you see in the schedule so far?
I absolutely do, Wes. And, some fans may not realize that going into next season, the regular season expands to 32 games. So there's an extra out-of-conference game that has to be scheduled this year, 14. So there's a real juggling act here in the balancing of those 14 games. I do like, having big games in neutral NBA arenas against good teams, but you have to be careful now. There's 4 games already scheduled that I would define in that parameter with Indiana, Providence. St. John's just has to be finalized now, and the game against the SEC team on the road. So you have 10 other games. We're here in Albany, Colgate, Cornell, some other upstate teams. So I'll be interested to see the rest of the balance, but I do like GMAC wants to play the toughest teams, get his team ready for the NCAA tournament, and you have to, because you have to have a strong strength of schedule in a very balanced and tough top of the ACC.
So, Brad, I'll start here. It's great that Syracuse is playing down at Madison Square Garden, right? You can't call yourself New York's college team if you aren't playing at the Mecca on a regular basis. And I can't believe it's been 5 years, and that's definitely something that I'm glad Jerry McNamara addressed. And as for the game itself, St. John's is where Syracuse wishes it was right now. Rick Pitino has consistently led the Red Storm to being ranked in the top 25 over 3 seasons at St. John's. He's a combined 81 and 25. I think that's something that Syracuse would want. And with 2 NCAA tournament appearances, including getting St. John's back to its first Sweet 16 since 1999. So that's a really good matchup for Syracuse. I don't think that's a win for Syracuse, but I think that's actually a game that they absolutely need to play. And as for the rest of the schedule, you mentioned it, they have basically 3 away games against Power 5 opponents. The fourth, if you mentioned the ACC SEC Challenge. I want to talk about in Boston for Providence, in Indianapolis against Indiana. Technically, those are neutral site games, but those are definitely going to be a quadrant 1 or at the very worst quadrant 2 games along with St. John's in the SEC matchup. So do I like what Jerry McNamara is doing with the schedule? Absolutely.
And to your point about St. John's is New York, the Red Storm proclaimed their New York's team. So this is going to be an interesting battle, likely in December, to see who really is New York's team, upstate or downstate. But really love the fact Syracuse should be playing it. We've talked about it every year in Madison Square Garden. Just no doubt about that.
So we're going to take a quick break. 2027 running back and Syracuse commit Xavier Bala. When we return, this is the Juice on the Cuse podcast. Back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast, Wes Cheng here with you. One of the top prospects in New York is 2027 running back Xavier Bala. He committed to Syracuse earlier in the month, and we welcome him on the podcast today. Xavier, thanks for the time. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
Xavier, you're now committed to Syracuse. How does it feel?
It feels good. It's nice to be in my home state. I love Coach Fran, love the coaching staff. So, yeah, big relief. My recruiting's done. So, yeah.
So what made you decide to pick the Orange?
I really like what Coach Fran's building. I like their vision for me specifically. I like Coach DT. I got to build a good relationship with him. And just the way that they were my first offer, just the way that they were consistent with recruiting me like this whole time. So that's the reasons I chose them.
Xavier, you mentioned that Syracuse was your first offer. What did it mean for SU to be that first offer when you were deciding on a school?
It just shows that they saw my potential early, and they knew the player I was going to become. They never stopped recruiting me. They never recruited me lighter. It's just been going up from building my relationship from the beginning till now.
So you mentioned a bunch of the coaches already, including Coach Thomas and Coach Fran. Can you talk about your relationship with the staff and especially Fran Brown?
Coach Fran, I've talked to a lot. I've met with him privately, me, my family, him, just me and him. We've had a lot of talks. Coach DT, he's the new running back coach, but in that time I've talked to him at least 3 times a week, every week. So, yeah, he's been to my house a couple of times during recruiting. So, yeah.
Xavier, take me to the moment when you told the coaching staff you were committing.
All the schools that were recruiting me, my dad said it's time to tell everyone because I already made my decision at that point. So I called every school that was recruiting me. I said, I'm sorry, thank you for recruiting me, but I'm going to Cuse. And then lastly, I called Cuse. I called Coach DT first. Told him I was committing. He was excited. Then I called Coach Nixon. Then I called Coach Fran. And, yeah.
And how did they react when you told them?
They were excited. I didn't want the other coaches that I called first to tell Coach Fran, so I told them to keep it, kind of quiet because I want to be the one to tell Coach Fran. But they were really excited because they were trying to get me for a long time.
So now that you're committed, tell me about the kind of running back you are.
I would say I'm a balanced running back. I could do it all, but I think I'm going to wear teams down. I'm big, I'm fast, strong. I can play any type of way. I can run through someone. I can shift someone. I can run past someone. So any way you need me to play, I can play. I could catch, could block.
Xavier, we've been in touch throughout your whole recruitment process, and one of the things you've said to us is you're always looking to improve. What's the biggest thing you're going to show on the field this fall?
Working on being a better leader to lead my team to a state championship. That's something that we haven't been able to do in my years at St. Anne's. So, yeah, this is the year to do it. This is my senior year. So just being a leader there.
And Xavier, we'll get you out of here on this one. What message do you have for Syracuse fans listening to this podcast?
You're going to get a hard worker, and I'm going to help you guys win an ACC championship.
Xavier, thanks for coming on the program. We appreciate the time. Congratulations again on the commitment. We'll catch up with you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Xavier Bala, ladies and gentlemen, 3-star recruit out of Long Island, the number 4 overall prospect in New York, according to 24/7 Sports. Huge pickup for the Orange. We're going to take a quick break and wrap things up after. This is the Juice on the Cuse podcast. Back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast, Wes Cheng alongside Brad Bierman. Thanks for listening to the show, and don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Brad, we are right at the end of our show. You have a closing thought for us?
I do, Wes. And, one of these years I'm going to schedule this road trip to cover the ACC spring meetings in beautiful Amelia Island, Florida. I'm not going to be probably staying at the Ritz-Carlton where they hold the meetings, but it'd be great and fun to cover it because it's such a relaxed atmosphere. And coming out of this year's meetings, one of the focal points was talking, of course, about all the financial revenue sources for the ACC moving forward, its relationship with ESPN, its media partner, and potential future opportunities for schools to have exclusive game broadcasts a la Duke and Amazon Prime Video in the upcoming season. But also what was discussed is expansion in the postseason, both for college football and the NCAA tournament, which we already know is expanding to 76 teams, but particularly for college football and the playoffs and how it pertains to the ACC, pushing for 24 teams. And Wes, I know the talk has been 16 or 24 and the percentage of 130, 135 FBS teams that play at the top level, but 24, is it going to be dominated by SEC and Big Ten? Yes, probably half. So you're talking 3 or 4 ACC bids. So it's still going to be that number, and it's still going to be something for schools like Syracuse in the conference to be competing each year to get to one of those slots in the CFP.
Brad, I wanted to close the show on upcoming official visit season in football. We just had Xavier Bala on. He'll officially be visiting the Syracuse on the weekend of June 12. Syracuse is set to host more than 36 prospects on official visits in May and June. Most recently, we caught up with Georgia defensive back Jalen Welsh, who will be on campus with Bala on June 12 weekend. He tells the Juice Online, quote, "Syracuse is a school that's on the rise, that is building something amongst the new coaches," end quote. So lots of exciting news for the football program coming up. I think there's going to be a lot of commits from this group.
I think Syracuse is going to be a sleeper this year because the recruiting of the full recruiting now in 3 cycles under Fran Brown. And I think it's, we've talked about it. It's nonstop. It's continuing at the highest level. And that only means good news, again, for those bids that are going to be finite for the ACC in the future in the CFP.
That's it for us. For Brad Bierman, this is Wes Cheng. You've been listening to the Juice on the Cuse podcast presented by On SI and Bleav, and we will see you next time.